I've always found solace in the quiet aisles of bookstores, the kind where time seems to have its own rhythm and stories leap from tattered pages. At 29, running a business that my parents helped me set up, I often escaped to these havens, seeking the company of books over people. That day at Dusty Pages, a little haven tucked away in the city's heart, was no different. Or so I thought. As I wandered through the maze of shelves, my fingers traced the spines of countless books, each holding a universe within. My quest was specific, a rare, antique edition that had eluded me for months. And there it was, almost glowing amidst the dust and shadows. As I reached out, another hand mirrored mine, halting inches from the prize. Startled, I looked up into a pair of curious eyes. The owner of the hand was a man about my age, with a kind of easygoing charm. "Oh, I'm sorry," he said, quickly retracting his hand. "Were you going for this one?" "Yeah, I've been on its trail for ages," I replied, surprised at my own honesty. He gave a half smile, me too. "It's a tough find. But go ahead, you found it first." His gesture, so simple yet rare, caught me off guard. "Are you sure?" "I mean, we both found it at the same time," I said, feeling a strange mix of guilt and gratitude. "Yeah, I'm sure. I'm Jake, by the way," he introduced himself, extending his hand. "Nice to meet you, Jake." "I am, well, let's just say I'm a fellow book lover," I said, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, friendly. We both chuckled, and I took the book, feeling a twinge of victory mixed with sympathy. "You're a rare breed, Jake. Giving up a find like this." He shrugged, "Books come and go. But it's not every day you get to make someone's day." I laughed, "Well, you've certainly made mine. I'm in this place often, but I haven't seen you around." "You a regular?" "Nah, first time here. I usually stick to the tech world, but there's something about old books, you know?" I nodded, understanding all too well. We found a corner table amidst the stacks and started talking about books, life, and everything in between. He was easy to talk to, a listener with stories of his own. He was curious about my business, but I dodged the topic, not ready to delve into the whole successful businesswoman with family support narrative just yet. Hours slipped by like minutes as we talked. I learned about his tech job, his love for hiking, and his surprisingly good taste in old movies. In turn, I shared my love for antique books, my random adventures, and my guilty pleasure of bad reality TV shows. As the bookstore began to dim its lights, signaling closing time, we exchanged numbers. "It was really great meeting you, Jake. Maybe we can do this again, talk more about books, or anything else," I said, feeling a connection I hadn't anticipated. "Absolutely," he replied, his smile genuine. "I'll hold you to that. And maybe next time, I'll find the book first." After several months of dating Jake, the inevitable happened, meeting his family. He'd warned me about them, how they were a bit, well, let's just say they had their quirks. He was especially worried about them finding out about my business and the money situation. So, I decided to play it down, saying I was a freelancer. Just a simple girl writing articles, nothing fancy. We drove to his parents' house one Sunday. It was a modest home, the kind that had seen better days. The moment we walked in, I felt the weight of their eyes sizing me up. "Mom, Dad, this is..." Jake started. "I'm Sarah," I cut in, offering a smile that felt more like a shield. His mom, a stern-looking woman with a permanent frown, gave me a once-over. "Sarah, huh? And what is it you do?" "I'm a freelance writer. I write articles for websites," I replied, trying to sound as humble as possible. His dad, a quiet man with a knack for disappearing into the background, just nodded. But it was Jake's sister, Linda, who spoke next. "A freelancer? So, like, you don't have a real job?" Linda's voice dripped with a mix of curiosity and disdain. I felt Jake's hand tighten around mine, a silent plea for patience. "Well, it pays the bills." "It's honest work," I said, keeping my tone light. Linda snorted. Sounds more like freeloading to me. Bet you're just waiting to latch onto Jake's income. Dinner was an awkward affair. His parents made small talk, asking Jake about his work, barely acknowledging my presence. Linda, on the other hand, was like a dog with a bone, dropping snide remarks every chance she got. So, Sarah, freelancing must be tough. Bet you don't get to go on fancy trips or buy nice things, Linda said, her eyes sharp. I forced a laugh. Oh, you know, I manage. I like simple things. Jake tried to change the subject, talking about a recent project he was working on. But Linda wouldn't let up. And what about kids? Planning on any? Or would that be too much for a freelancer to handle? She pressed on. I could feel Jake's frustration growing, mirroring my own. We haven't really thought that far ahead, he said, his voice tight. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of uncomfortable exchanges and forced smiles. Things started heating up after that awkward dinner with Jake's family. It wasn't long before his mom and sister, Linda, began dropping by our place uninvited. They'd come in, plop themselves on the couch, and make themselves right at home, often staying for hours. It was like they were marking their territory, reminding me that I was the outsider. One such afternoon, while Jake was at work, his mom and Linda showed up. As usual, they made a beeline for the kitchen, expecting to be fed. I had just made some sandwiches for myself, which they took as an invitation to lunch. So, Sarah, still freelancing? Linda asked, taking a bite of the sandwich I had made for myself. I nodded, trying to keep my cool. Yep, still at it. It's going well. And how much does that bring in, if you don't mind me asking? His mom chimed in, her eyes scanning my modest living room like she was calculating my worth. I shrugged, enough to get by. I don't really discuss my finances. Linda smirked, must be nice, living off Jake while pretending to work. I clenched my jaw, feeling my patience wearing thin. Actually, I pay my own bills. Jake and I keep our finances separate. Their prying continued, but I dodged their questions, keeping my answers vague. They seemed to take pleasure in trying to undermine me, questioning my lifestyle, my job, even my relationship with Jake. Then came the family dinner at Jake's mom's place. It was supposed to be a casual get-together, but it felt more like a trial by fire. We all sat around the dining table, the air thick with unspoken tensions. Linda, who had been oddly quiet, suddenly turned to Jake. So, brother, I was thinking, for my son's birthday, you could get him that gaming console he's been wanting. It's a bit pricey, but you can afford it, right? Jake, who had been picking at his food, looked up, surprised. Linda, you know I can't do that. Things are tight right now, what with the wedding and all. Linda's face turned sour. Oh, so now that you're married, you suddenly can't spare a dime for your nephew? Jake's frustration was evident. It's not about that, Linda. Sarah and I have our own expenses. I can't just splurge on expensive gifts. The argument escalated, with Linda accusing me of monopolizing Jake's finances and attention. You've changed, Jake. Ever since she came into your life, you've been stingy and distant. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, the unspoken blame hanging heavy in the air. Jake tried to defend me, but Linda wouldn't have it. She stormed out, leaving a trail of tension behind. After the blow-up at the family dinner, Jake and I decided we needed a break from all the drama. We planned a short trip to the mountains, a chance to clear our heads and get some breathing room. It was a peaceful, rejuvenating escape, just the two of us and nature. But the moment we returned, reality crashed back in, harder than ever. We barely had time to unpack when there was a furious knocking at our door. I opened it to find Linda, red-faced and fuming. We need to talk, she said, pushing past me into the apartment. What's going on, Linda? Why are you here? I asked, closing the door. She whirled around, eyes blazing. Don't play dumb, Sarah. I know what you're doing. You're bleeding Jake dry, using his money to go on fancy trips and buy expensive stuff. And now you're turning him against his own family. I was taken aback by her accusation. Linda, that's not true. We both pay for our expenses, and this trip was planned long ago. She wasn't listening, though. You think you're so clever, huh? Making him think he doesn't need us, that we're just after his money. But I see right through you. Jake came out of the bedroom, having heard the commotion. Linda, what the hell? You can't just barge in here and start accusing Sarah of nonsense. She rounded on him. Nonsense? Look at you, Jake. Ever since she came into your life, you've been different. You used to help us, be there for us. Now you're just her puppet. Jake's patience was wearing thin. Linda, I'm not anyone's puppet. Sarah and I make our decisions together. And as for helping you, I can't keep bailing you out every time you have a financial problem. Linda's anger seemed to boil over. In a fit of rage, she swept her arm across the coffee table, sending my collection of antique books crashing to the floor. This is what you care about now? Old, useless books and a gold digger? I gasped, rushing to salvage my books. Jake grabbed Linda's arm, steering her towards the door. That's enough, Linda. Leave. Now. She struggled against him. You'll regret this, Jake. Choosing her over your own family. After she left, the apartment was eerily silent, the tension hanging thick in the air. Jake helped me pick up the books, his face a mix of anger and regret. The weeks following Linda's outburst were quiet, almost nearly so. Jake and I had started to relax a bit, thinking maybe, just maybe, his family had decided to back off. That was until we got the call from his mom about her birthday dinner at a fancy restaurant downtown. When Jake mentioned that his mother's birthday dinner would be at Le Jardin, I couldn't help but grin. I had a special connection with that place, a little secret that I hadn't shared with anyone, not even Jake. As we drove to the restaurant, I could sense Jake's anxiety. He fidgeted in his seat, clearly worried about how the evening would unfold after the recent tensions with his family. You okay? I asked, reaching over to give his hand a reassuring squeeze. Yeah, just hoping tonight goes smoothly, he replied, forcing a smile. Le Jardin was as elegant as ever, with its dim lighting and soft music creating an intimate ambience. Jake's family was already there, seated at a large, round table. The scene was lively, with animated conversations and laughter, but it all seemed to pause as we approached. I quickly noticed there was only one empty chair. Jake, with a hint of confusion in his voice, addressed his sister, Linda. Hey, Linda, why is there only one seat? We're both here. Linda, with a smirk that didn't quite reach her eyes, said, Oh, Jake, we assumed Sarah wouldn't mind. After all, this is a family gathering, and she's not really family, is she? Maybe she can find a spot at the bar. The table erupted in a mix of awkward chuckles and murmurs. Jake's face turned a shade of red, a mixture of embarrassment and anger. I felt their eyes on me, expecting me to react, to show some sign of hurt or outrage. But instead, I laughed, a genuine, hearty laugh. That's quite all right, Linda. I wouldn't want to impose. Jake, still holding my hand, looked at me with a puzzled expression. Sarah, you sure you're okay with this? I squeezed his hand. Absolutely. Don't worry about me. I'll find a place. Enjoy the dinner. As I stepped away from the table, I could feel their eyes on me, a mix of surprise and uncertainty in their gaze. I approached the restaurant manager, a familiar face, with a confident stride. Hi, John, seems there's a bit of a mix-up at our table. Could you find a spot for me? I asked, my tone light but firm. John's professional demeanor broke into a smile of recognition. Of course, Sarah. For the owner of Le Jardin, we always have the best table available. The words were loud enough for Jake's family to hear, and I glanced back to see their expressions shift from smug satisfaction to utter shock. Linda's and her mother's mouths hung open, their plan to belittle me backfiring spectacularly. As John led me to a beautifully set table in a prime location, I couldn't help but savor the moment. The irony of the situation was delicious, and their stunned faces were a sight to behold. Sitting at my own VIP table at Le Jardin, I couldn't help but feel a mix of triumph and amusement. Jake sat across from me, his expression still a mix of shock and pride. "Sarah, why didn't you tell me you own this place?" he asked, his eyes wide with curiosity. I shrugged, sipping my wine. I guess I never found the right moment. And, honestly, I wanted to keep some parts of my life just for me, at least for a little while. He laughed, shaking his head. "This is incredible. No wonder you weren't fazed by Linda's comment." Our meal was delightful, the food exquisite as always, but the real entertainment was the drama unfolding at the family table. Midway through our dinner, Linda and Jake's mom, with hesitant steps and awkward expressions, approached our table. "Sarah, we didn't know," Jake's mom stammered, clearly struggling to find the right words. "Yeah, about the restaurant, and you owning it," Linda added, her usual confidence deflated. I put down my fork, giving them a calm look. "It's okay. Not many people do. I prefer to keep my business affairs private." Jake's mom fidgeted, glancing at the other table where the rest of the family was pretending not to eavesdrop. I mean, about the bill tonight. We assumed you'd." I raised an eyebrow. "You assumed I'd pay because I own the place." They both nodded, visibly uncomfortable. I could tell they were expecting me to bail them out of the awkward situation they had created for themselves. I leaned back in my chair, choosing my words carefully. "Well, as much as I'd love to treat everyone, I think it's important for us to stick to what was planned. It seems, someone said that I'm not a family member, right?" The look on their faces was a mix of surprise and embarrassment. Linda, usually so quick to speak, was at a loss for words. They returned to their table, their departure marked by a few curious glances from the other guests. Turning back to our meal, Jake let out a low whistle. "Well, that was something." I laughed, the tension from earlier completely diffused. "Just a typical dinner with your family, huh?" He nodded, his eyes still on his family's table. "You know, I'm starting to think these dinners are cursed." We finished our meal in peace, the atmosphere at our table starkly contrasting with the palpable tension at the family table. As we left the restaurant, I felt a sense of closure, like I had finally established my place in this complicated family dynamic. Their attempts to belittle me had backfired, and in revealing a part of my life I had kept private, I had gained an unexpected upper hand. The ride home from Le Jardin was filled with a mix of silence and soft music playing in the background. Jake seemed deep in thought, occasionally glancing at me as if he was about to say something but then deciding against it. Finally, as we pulled into our driveway, he spoke up. "Sarah, I'm really sorry about tonight. My family, they can be too much." I turned off the car's engine and looked at him. "Jake, it's not your fault. But we do need to talk about this." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Yeah, I know. What do you think we should do?" I took a moment before answering. "I think it's time we set some boundaries. Your family's behavior has been out of line, and tonight it was too much." Jake nodded, his expression grave. "I agree. I just never expected things to get this bad. Linda and Mom, they've always been difficult, but this..." "It's not just about Linda and your mom," I interjected. "It's about respecting our relationship, our choices. They can't keep treating me, like this." Jake reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. "You're right. I'll talk to them. It's time they understand that they can't walk all over us." The following day, Jake made the call. I could hear bits and pieces of the conversation from the other room, his tone was firm, resolute. After he hung up, he came into the living room, looking somewhat relieved but also apprehensive. "I did it. I told them we need space, that their behavior is unacceptable. They didn't take it well, but I think it's for the best. I got up and gave him a hug. Thank you, Jake. I know that wasn't easy. He hugged me back, tight. You're worth it. I should have done this a long time ago. The weeks that followed were surprisingly peaceful. No unexpected visits, no snide remarks, no drama. It was a relief, but also a bit surreal. One evening, as we were enjoying a quiet dinner at home, Jake looked up from his plate. You know, I've been thinking. Maybe this break from my family is a good thing. Gives us time to focus on us, on what we want. I smiled, reaching across the table to hold his hand. I've been thinking the same thing. It's nice, isn't it? Just being us, without all the noise. He nodded, a contented smile spreading across his face. Yeah, it really is. Cutting ties with Jake's family wasn't an easy decision, but it brought a sense of clarity and peace to our lives. It was a step towards prioritizing our happiness and well-being, a step that was long overdue. Sitting on our living room couch, Jake and I were enjoying a quiet evening. The room was filled with the soft glow of the lamp and the faint sound of a jazz record playing in the background. I couldn't help but reflect on the roller coaster of events that had unfolded in our lives recently. Jake, I started, breaking the comfortable silence. Do you ever think about how things would have been if we had just, I don't know, given in to your family's demands? He looked over at me, his eyes thoughtful. Sometimes, yeah, but then I remember how unhappy we were, constantly trying to please them. I think we made the right choice. I nodded, feeling the weight of his words. It's just crazy, you know? How much we've been through because of all this. Makes me wonder what's really important in life. Jake reached out and took my hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. What's important is this, us, being honest with each other, standing up for what we believe in. I smiled, feeling a sense of warmth spreading through me. You're right. I guess it's all about finding a balance, isn't it? Between dealing with family and staying true to ourselves. Yeah, balance, he echoed, his gaze shifting to the window. You know, before all this, I always thought family was about sticking together no matter what. But now, I realize it's more than that. It's about respect, understanding, and sometimes, distance. I leaned my head on his shoulder. I never expected my life to turn out like this. Meeting you, starting a business, dealing with all the family drama. It's been a journey. And what a journey it's been, he added with a chuckle. With its ups and downs, but I wouldn't change a thing. We sat there in silence for a while, lost in our thoughts. The challenges we had faced with his family had tested us in ways we never anticipated. But through it all, we had grown stronger, both as individuals and as a couple. That evening, as we sat together, I realized that life is unpredictable and often challenging. But with the right person by your side, it's an adventure worth every moment. Our story wasn't just about dealing with difficult in-laws or running a successful business. It was about love, resilience, and the power of standing together against the odds.